Go. Oh, Tom, I'm going to make you the co-host so we can be letting people in here.
Thank you.
There we go. Okay, so welcome. Some folks are still jumping on, but we might as well get started. Welcome to our third Thursday conversation. We are today using a little bit of a tweaked Pro Action Cafe format. So you may have seen that in the announcement along with the Zoom link, however it is that you found out about this conversation. Isaac, don't let me forget, you have an announcement to make in a minute, but I thought maybe we do very quick introductions first. So quick that I don't know if you can see this. I'll repost it for folks that are just jumping on. There's a Mad Lib in the chat box for you. So well, actually, let me just model this. And I might actually even call on people on the order of my screen. But so my name is Katie Nakamura Ringers. I am the staff officer for church planting with the presiding bishop's office, but I live in Birmingham. And March 31st feels way too early this year for Easter. I haven't even taken my Valentine's decorations down. All right, let's see. Jer.
Hi, my name is Jer Hinson. I am the priest in charge of St. Paul's Leavenworth and the new Episcopal community planter as an additional duty to the bishop at the Diocese of Kansas. And I think Easter is just right anytime it comes. So even this early.
Beautiful. Robin and then Amy.
Yes, I am Robin Pierre. I am in the Diocese of New Jersey. I am the missioner for the Haitian communities in the diocese. So I am preparing for the Holy Week and to jump to the Easter day.
Excellent. Thank you.
I'm Amy. I'm a curate for parish life in Denver, Diocese of Colorado, and March 31st does feel a little too early for Easter this year. It came quite quickly.
Cool. Tom, Isaac, then Robert.
Hey, my name is Tom Brackett, and I serve on the presiding bishop's staff, serving leaders of new ministries and redeveloping ministries across the Episcopal Church. My role here is limited because I'm out in the church at large most of the time. March 31st feels just right for this year for Easter. If it came any later, it would feel like spring's already happened, it's over, and the church is too late. So this is just right. It's brilliant here. And thank you.
My name is Isaac Martinez, and I am a priest in charge of Trinity Parish in Melrose, and also a church planter for the Alston Abbey, both in the Diocese of Massachusetts, outside in Boston. And I wish Easter had happened already so that I could take my post-Easter vacation.
For those just joining us, we have a check-in Mad Lib in the chat box. And we're on to Robert.
I'm Robert Kistler from Church of Transfiguration in Mesa, Arizona. I spend summers in the Siouxland area of Sioux City, Iowa, and attend church there, and was involved with inviting people last year that started out inviting 3 people on a Sunday morning. And when I came to Arizona at Christmas, we had 83 in attendance for a Dinka service.
Robert, is March 31st too early, too late, or just right for Easter this year for you?
It works for me anytime.
Excellent. Let's go. Christopher, Olivia, and then Suzanne.
Hello, I'm Christopher Robertson. As of Saturday, I will be the priest in charge and missioner at Living Grace Lutheran Episcopal Church in Frederick, Maryland. And Easter 31st, March 31st is exciting because it will be my first Easter presiding as a priest. So.
Okay, I think that was my cue. My name's Olivia. I'm a associate rector at Calvary Episcopal Church in Cincinnati, Ohio. I also working on a church plant called The Brood for foster, adoptive, and kinship families. And my rector leaves for sabbatical on like April 1. And so I'm a little anxious about her leaving and Easter, but it's one of those things where the anxiety will continue to build until I just like do it. And so I'm kind of like, all right, come on, like Easter anytime. I'm an anytime Easter person. And also this year, I'm like, all right, let's get it done. So yeah, that's me.
I'm Suzanne Gappa, and I am a parish member at Messiah Episcopal Church, hi Jer, in St. Paul, Minnesota, and I work with our Karen Burmese church plant core team, along with a whole bunch of wonderful Karen folks and a whole bunch of wonderful Anglo folks that are doing this project together. And Easter, wow. Well, here in Minnesota, we haven't really had winter yet, although it is apparently barreling down on us this weekend. We're supposed to get something like 12 inches of snow on Sunday and Monday, and we've had 14 so far this entire winter, which is like a fraction of what we usually get. So it's very weird. And I was ready to say, you know, all the forsythias are blooming, all the early spring flowers are coming up, and then winter's coming back on Palm Sunday. So Easter just feels really topsy-turvy to me this year. I have no idea what part of the season we're actually in. It feels like we're going backwards.
Wow. Erica, Eric, and then Margaret.
Hey everyone, I'm Erica Rosalski. I'm associate priest in Las Vegas in 3 different contexts, one of which is not a church plant yet because we're not there. So one is an evangelism effort for a neighborhood to see if there is a community that would like to form in a new part of, well, a new developing part of the city. So, and then Easter is right on time, feels right on time for me. It's also my first Easter as a priest. But it felt weird because I was ordained in December and then Ash Wednesday was in February. So I feel like it feeling too early already happened. And so now Easter is right on time.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm Eric McIntosh. I'm in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. I bleed black and gold, yes. Okay, sorry, I had my moment. I am a church planter. In fact, July will mark 11 years with my church plant. I church planted. I started my church plant with a building first and then people second. And email me, I'll tell you about it. I'm also the canon for our Beloved Community Initiatives for our diocese here in Pittsburgh. And I keep feeling like, wait, what? March has 31 days? I am totally not ready for Easter. Yeah, I'm not ready for Easter yet. We have on Palm Sunday this big food giveaway and clothing giveaway that we're doing right after church, and it's pretty exciting, but that has totally dominated my thinking. And so Holy Week, Easter, like I could use another 2 weeks.
We'll pray for you, Eric.
Thank you very much.
All right.
Did you want me to talk? I didn't know if
Yes.
the other Margaret had spoken, so I was
Oh, let's
confused.
start with you, Margaret.
Okay. My name is Margaret Smith. I'm a parishioner at Grace Church in Medford, Massachusetts, a neighbor to Isaac's Church in Melrose. And I'm actually a lay ministry coordinator at my church, but one of the things I work on is welcoming and connecting folks in the parish. I also do some consulting for the diocese for transitions, priest in charge, and search consulting. And so I basically came on because my priest forwarded me the information, and I thought I'd jump on and see what this is about. So, and for me, Easter feels a little too early just because of the weather, and I've been away. It's cold here. It hasn't, we're not going to get, hopefully not going to get a foot of snow. And I was away for a few weeks, so I feel like I'm coming back and it's Holy Week, which is a little disconcerting, but, and then I guess, has the other Margaret spoken?
Let's see, other Margarets.
Hi, other Margaret has not spoken. I thought I was going to have some company here since other Margaret is not a priest, but she has a lot going on, whereas I do not. I'm in the wrong room here, but
no, you're not.
I don't know what you can do about it at this point. Robin, Pierre, I'm so aggrieved about what's going on in Haiti, and yeah, give my love to your parishioners, and hoping for the best here.
Yes.
Thank you so much.
Yes. Margaret, can we invite you just to, you might have just said it, but where you are and how you're feeling about the timing of Easter this year?
I'm in Prineville, which is in Central Oregon. It's deeply red lumberjacks and cowboys, and and the only thing I do is play the piano, so I could use a couple extra weeks, but I'm not going to get them. I mean, the Episcopal Church has an algorithm from, I don't know, 2,000 years, so not going to argue with it.
Well, welcome, Margaret, and welcome all. And I'm going to ask you the same question this time next year. No, not this time next year, but I'm going to find out how you feel about like April 20th Easter. Okay, before we get started with this, Isaac Martinez, can I invite you to say something about, our favorite topic these days, General Convention and church planting and all that kind of good stuff?
The intersection thereof, of course. So one of the many hats I wear is I am a deputy from the Diocese of Massachusetts, and to my surprise and great delight, the president of the House of Deputies asked me to chair the Deputies Legislative Committee on Evangelism and the Future Church. And as part of that remit, we have responsibility for the resolutions that deal with church planting. And so our first open hearing for that is coming up on Saturday, April 20th at 12 p.m. Eastern, 9 a.m. Pacific. And as church planters, I invite you or people interested in starting something new, inviting people who don't normally darken the doors of Episcopal churches into the Episcopal Church. I invite you to consider testifying to particularly resolution A045, which is the resolution on supporting and celebrating new Episcopal communities. I will be there chairing that hearing, and it would be a gift and a delight to see friendly faces there. So feel free to direct message me if you have any questions about what that might entail. And thank you, Katie, for letting me make that announcement.
Beautiful. Thank you, Isaac. All right, so we are gathered and we are bringing, so our third Thursday conversations, we've been experimenting with different ways of offering what we call a pro-action cafe. And the idea behind a pro-action cafe, some of you have been on that before, some of you have not, is to bring some scenarios. So namely, usually it's a possibility or a particular challenge. So one person, one or well, sometimes a couple or even three folks may bring just a little bit more than a case study, because it's something that's relevant to us in the moment, but something kind of like that, a little scenario, a challenge, an opportunity that we're trying to figure out how to either accept or address. And then the rest of us, there's some provocative questions that we are able to ask, some kind of wondering kind of questions to help so it both helps the person who brings that call to sort of sort through what's the deeper meaning, what's the deeper purpose, and what maybe are some next steps, what I maybe not thinking about yet, what do I still need in order to begin to put together a plan forward. But then it also helps the rest of us to be thinking about how these things show up in our own contexts, to wonder about them together. So we're going to try this just a little bit differently than we did last month, and actually offer a theme around which we're first going to invite all of us to respond to this theme question in the chat box. You don't have to, but if you would like to, you're welcome to. And then what we'll do is we will invite probably at this point, maybe 2, possibly 3 of us to actually share that call out loud, elaborate just a little bit on it to get a little bit more context. And then the rest of us will do that deep wondering and asking of questions that hopefully leads towards some kind of plan of action. Tom, what would you add to that description before I put our question up on the screen?
Thank you, Katie. I mean, I like what you said. I think when I've experienced this at its best, it was a mutual invitation to consider something that was important to all of us. So it wasn't so much a logistical thing, like help me brainstorm or problem solve, as much as it was, how do we together, when we're in this place, get to the heart of something? Where do we touch on the most lively aspect of this possibility? So this is really heart work, I would say. It's heart work in the sense that we're inviting you, once you hear an invitation or a call or a particular set of possibilities that speaks to you, stay close to your heart in your response to this. Let's see where it takes us. That's all I would say.
That's excellent. Okay, so here is our question. And at this point, we're going to invite everyone who would like to at this point to respond to this question briefly in the chat box. So I'll give us, I don't know, 30, 45 seconds to do that. Let's put this in the big view here. So we tried to select a topic for this that is maybe on many of our hearts and minds these days as leaders in the church, ordained or not. What is something on your calendar, or maybe on your dream calendar, that you would really like to invite others into, but you're not quite certain what that invitation looks like at this point? What is something on your calendar, your real calendar, or your dream calendar you would really like to invite others into, but you're not quite certain what that invitation looks like?
So to be clear, you're talking about something specific. There's something specific on the calendar, but you're not sure about the shape of the invitation that would bring the person into that specific piece on the event on the calendar.
Yes.
Okay.
All right. So I'll give us about 45 seconds. And of course, you're welcome to take a little longer than that, but we'll rejoin at that point. Just type type your 1 or 2 or 3 sentence response there in the chat box.
Ooh, ooh. I want to hang out with all of you. All y'all, as they say here. This is great.
It's been 45 seconds, but I'm going to give us another 20 because typing happens slower for me than I expected.
Hmm.
Mm. Mm. This is good. Mm. So these are amazing. Our next step is to select 1 or 2 or maybe even 3 of these. We can do it one at a time or we can do them all together. That we might really like to work on over the next 40 minutes or so as a group. And let me ask this question and just see where it gets us. Is there anyone that put something in the chat box that you might be willing to just elaborate a bit more on out loud and allow us to use as an example for the learning of the whole?
I can go. You can use me.
Can we?
Sure. So my mission church does not have, we meet at a local YMCA. We don't actually have a church building. And so part of my mission is to be a part of the community. And so I've been sitting at least once a week at a local restaurant with my collar on and just spending time meeting people and talking to people. And in addition to that, we've been hosting outside dinners where people from the group, we all gather at local restaurants. And again, I'm, dressed up in my priest garb and we just sit and talk and invite people to join us. And it's been a really great opportunity to meet people. And I've learned that people have questions about life in general. I mean, not necessarily religion, but certainly religion is a part of it. But when they see a person with a collar on who sits there and is and open to conversation, they are feeling like they can ask questions. And I've had questions from anything about, the issues in the Middle East and Gaza and Palestine and Israel to discussions about what we believe versus the Catholic Church believes in terms of the sacraments. I've had great discussions, around some of the political topics. We've talked about immigration and refugees. And so I really feel like there's this need for a safe place for people to just come and ask those questions, that's not necessarily sitting in a church with a cross at the front, because that can be intimidating, especially to people who aren't from the church culture. But, church people can attend as well. But I feel like just to go out and talk about what it means to be a Christian and how that impacts my worldview and our congregation's worldview, and in terms of service and loving our neighbors, and let people ask questions, because I've gotten the impression that a lot of people see us as a certain way. We're represented in the media by a specific demographic, which is not necessarily a demographic that represents me or our church. And so just allowing a place where people can ask questions, both from within and from without of the outside of the church. And so, but I don't know how to really go about doing it, inviting people in.
Oh, that's great. Thank you, Christopher.
Mm.
So as Tom was
Okay.
saying, it could be easy to jump in and just brainstorm, right?
Mm-hmm.
And for that reason, we actually have some specific themes that we try to get out here. And I've put them in the chat box. Is everyone able to see the chat box?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So for the first section of this is around asking some probing questions. Christopher, you're welcome to answer the questions that we ask, but you also don't have to answer them. They can kind of just rest, you know. But we're gonna be sort of asking some questions and making some observations about the quest behind the call. So like, what's the question behind the question? Does that make sense? Like kind of dig a little bit deeper into why this call, why this question. Tom and I will try to facilitate us into this next piece, because the next piece is around asking questions about like what's missing. What would help make this question, this call, this challenge, this opportunity feel more possible? What feel like next steps or things that could be addressed? And then the third piece, and again, we'll kind of facilitate us into this, is turning it back to Christopher, the person offering the story, just for anything that you want to give us kind of about what you're learning around yourself, about your project, new possibilities, etc. So that's really kind of your moment to reflect back. Okay, but if we're to sort of be at least somewhat faithful to this, our job at the moment, we've heard this story, we've kind of heard this challenge and opportunity. What are our wonderings? What are our thoughts that might help get at the deeper question behind the question?
I want to start out by asking Christopher about where this resides in your heart. And that's a strange way of asking it, but here's what I mean. Like, let's assume this happens and it goes really, really well, and you're surprised by the results, and it moves you to a new place in the way you think about your role and your leadership. Let's just imagine that it's more than you expected. What will be different in you as a result of having done this? What part of you will have been changed because you put yourself out there and extended this invitation? And then one of the questions I love to ask, and if we had another hour together, I would want to ask, if you were that non-churched person, maybe deeply spiritual but not religious, if you were that one and you were receiving the invitation, what kind of an invitation would you personally need in order to say yes to this kind of a gathering? And I'm not asking you to answer that right now, Christopher, just to be clear. But and you're welcome to at any point, because it might take us to a deeper place. But so as the rest of you ask questions around the issues of the quest behind the call, keep in mind Christopher does not have to answer, and it's just something maybe we talk to each other about.
So do we want to wait and see if Christopher wants to answer any of those two, or do we want to just keep throwing out questions until Christopher says yields to the pressure?
And Christopher, you're welcome to just start waving madly if there's a question in there that you want to answer, right?
Because I have some questions to add if you're not ready to answer anything. So what comes to my mind is pregnant within the invitation a desire to just share, to just get folks to understand where you are with Christ? Or is it also that you actually want them to change their mind and come to Christ? Is that something that's inside of you that's also driving the invitation? Because, unchurched folks, I'll leave it there. But yeah, yeah.
And this is the time for anyone to speak up. All you do is unmute and start talking. So we mean it to be more like a popcorn conversation at this point.
I think I really appreciated, Tom, your question about how would I want to receive an invitation. That's such a helpful reframe for thinking about this. And with what Eric was saying too, the question that came to mind for me was, how do I want to share, or how could Christopher share why being a part of a gathered community is so life affirming, is so life giving, is for me a core way of deepening my spiritual practice throughout the week. And so that lens of story sharing, and I'm just curious if that is people's experience. I haven't talked about with anyone about that. Like it just came, this question for me just came together right now. And so I'm just wondering if that's part of the story that we share with people when we're talking about an invitation to join.
Another layer of this, accountants like to talk about cost benefit analysis. And, in the language of discipleship, we say it does cost. We make a commitment that costs us, sometimes our lives. And then on the other side of that, I wonder if Christopher, or whenever I receive this kind of invitation, I think, is Christopher at a place where he can share what it means to be a Christian for Christopher, especially an Episcopalian, in ways that this particular audience can relate to, and does the benefit outweigh the cost in the ways that he describes this? Anyone else?
Yeah, I'll throw something else in there. Don't beat me up. But is there also the potential for being Episcopalian to get in the way of expressing what it is to be Christian? Can we invite folks to a gathering where they can discover Christ and then, discover how to express that Christianity through whatever community they may find themselves in the worshiping community and the like? What's the first face that a person gets in the invitation? The Episcopalian face or the Christian face? And can we tease out if there's really a difference or not? Or does somebody experience something maybe unintended in that?
I would add to that, Eric. You called out the Christian space and the Episcopal space, and there's also has been for me the church space. And just speaking from my experience, there's been moments where I've almost wished I didn't have the church space because my invitation was into the Christian space, and it felt like that just the church, Sunday church space was a ball and chain.
Yep.
Like that. Yeah.
Yep. Yep.
What I
No
hear you,
beatings.
oh, sorry. What I hear you kind of getting at too is the question of identity. And so Christopher, kind of going back to Tom's original question of where is this in your heart? I used to work in hospitality, and I always say it's the practice of holding an open heart. And so how can identity sometimes, if we're clinging to it too tightly, get in the way of holding an open heart? And so where do you notice within your own self, like physically in your embodiment, any particular tightness or tension or responses to what you hear people bringing up? And so what does it feel like to hold an open heart, and where do you notice a tightening around identity?
I was gonna go with the quote often attributed to St. Francis, which is preach the gospel and use words only as necessary, related to the question of cost benefit. At what point are words necessary? I think they are at times necessary, in terms of how we inhabit a ministry of presence versus how we speak the words of our faith in a way that's compelling to others. And how will you discern with that open heart when the words are necessary and what words those might be?
Olivia, that's awesome. And I think that also leads to the thinking of, are you speaking the same language? Does the word you speak mean the same thing to those you've invited? Right? Which speaks to imposing our thinking and culture on someone else versus entering into someone else's culture and space and environment. And having this when you must speak, does the word mean the same thing? That's pretty awesome. Olivia, thank you for that. And hi, by the way.
This is lovely. I love, Katie, the way you're naming sometimes church as the anteroom through which we invite people into another conversation, a different invitation. Sometimes it gets in the way. In that moment, you reminded me, and some of what you said, Eric, reminded me of that quote from Rumi: out beyond ideas of wrongdoing and right doing, there's a field. I'll meet you there. And the question that comes up for me is, borrowing from you, Amy, Christopher, how do you bring your heart to a space beyond the right doing, wrongdoing of church membership and belonging, or Episcopal tribalism, to a genuine heart-to-heart love and concern for the well-being of those you invite, so they find you in that field out beyond wrongdoing, right doing, and can meet you there?
One of the beauties of what you're doing, Christopher, of the situation is the clerical collar. And there, all the people who see you who think you're Catholic and want to run in the other direction, or want to come up to you because they think you're Catholic, whatever. It's you don't have to say a thing, it's there. The clerical collar speaks loudly. And my opinion of what the Episcopal, you could ask the Episcopal Church is circling the drain in some ways, dribbling off the court, whatever metaphor you want to use. why should the Episcopal Church be saved? And to me, the answer is, we have the light of Christ, and it's a big fat deal. And there are people who are hungry for it, and those people are the remnant. And it's not going to be very large, and it's getting smaller and smaller because people have hybridized their minds and spirits to these, things they hold in their hand. Cell phones, which are not phones, they're computers, and people have outsourced their memory. They've also outsourced their spirit. But there will be a remnant, and some of them are going to come up and talk to you, and it's a beautiful thing. Sorry to go on and on.
No. And we're kind of dancing on this edge anyway, but I'm going to invite us to keep going and move into the second question around what's missing? What would help make this opportunity feel even more possible?
One of the things that comes to mind for me of what's missing is other people. Like having one-on-one conversations is certainly phenomenal, but the more that people see that they're not alone in asking questions, that they're not alone in having these wonderings. And so sometimes maybe inviting somebody else into that. At the same time, it's intimidating. If you're having a conversation with one person already, it's not likely that a third will necessarily come in. So what could it look like to just expand that slightly? And to help others recognize or see themselves in other people, not just, in you. And the other question I have of wondering, in times that I've done this work before of wearing a collar and being open for people to ask questions, is what space is there for prayer or for blessings within that? I don't know if people already naturally ask you to hold something in prayer or say a prayer or ask for a blessing, but I wonder what room there is for inviting God into that space also.
So I'll throw something else out there about this one. One indictment I have of the civil rights movement is that we turned the term integration into assimilation because it was one-way street. It was, let us into your school, let us into your neighborhood, and there was no invitation to reciprocate. And so I'm thinking, as you are thinking about inviting, what spaces will you allow yourselves to be invited to? What communities are you open to join? And why do you want to join? Why would you want to join them? Right? A reciprocation where you're inviting them into your space. What space will you allow yourself to be invited into also? Because ultimately, right, you want to build genuine relationship. And I would say that genuine relationship might be asking you to join them too.
And could that even be part of the invitation? That the invitation demonstrates a commitment to mutuality, but maybe it's a two-part invitation. This week we're going to have a conversation about this, and next week we're going to go over there because we've been invited to have a different conversation or participate in a different event outside the usual for Christian Episcopalian Christians. I like it.
I don't know if this question makes any sense, but it's occurring to me, which is what would be the conditions under which it would be really weird if you didn't invite people into this more specific, deeper Christian spiritual conversation.
Oh, could you say it again? I didn't catch it.
What would be the conditions under which it would be weird for you not to invite people into a deeper spiritual Christian-y conversation? And is there...
Yeah, I need a moment on that, because what were the conditions that you wouldn't not invite them?
Yeah, or under which it would be really awkward and strange if you weren't inviting them. This is kind of one from just personal experience of right, like being the one priest in my running group, which I kind of referred to in the chat box. And there was a moment when we were out running and I realized how strange it was to not invite those people with whom I share so much of my life to share my Sunday life as well. And I know that the circumstances are different in each of our cases, but it's kind of helped me put words to that. Oh,
beautiful. There's the obvious, the classic, and I think this is great, but there's the obvious of making a big deal, inviting people to a Eucharistic wedding celebration, and then not being clear about what the invitation is in that particular congregation. 500 people gathered, and we're going to serve. Who can come forward? Who are we inviting to come forward?
I think, Katie, too, you're also saying something to the, am I risking something with the invitation that I don't want to unravel? Right? With if I have this particular friendship and relationship, do I want to mess that up with this other invitation? Right? Which might make it awkward, and it feels weird that I don't invite them in at the same time. But if I do, well, we're no longer what we used to be.
mm-hmm. Yeah, and I think you're exactly right. And then can I err on that side of kind of the risk and the fear to the point where people are like, but Katie, you're a priest. Why do you refuse to talk about Jesus? You know?
Wow. That's good. Ooh.
I think that other ways in which it can be weird. I love that question of what is the context that it would be weird to not do this? Because it's such a reframe, because I'm always like, it's so weird to do this, So thinking about what is the context where it would be weird to not do this, I think is so helpful, especially in terms of what's missing in this engagement with people, which Christopher, I want to talk to you about how you do this, because anyways, I don't know, but that's what I'm trying to do. But I mostly just sit there and look like this. But in terms of what's missing is that is that context weird to not then offer this invitation? If someone has already overcome the barrier of approaching or engaging with a priest in public in a non-church space, is that a context in which it's weird to not invite an invitation to meet again in that space or in a different space in whatever way? But is it by people already engaging with us very obviously as priests that it makes it weird to not then offer a way to connect in a deeper way, like to meet for coffee, or hey, I'll same time next week, let's continue this conversation. Or so it just really opened it up for me, oh, maybe the exact context is the one that makes it weird to not extend the invitation to join in a deeper discipleship discernment type journey.
Wow. This reminds me of a scene in the Seinfeld series when George is dating a woman and he lies and tells her that he's a marine biologist. And he doesn't know that Kramer's been driving golf balls off of the pier into the Hudson River. And he's out on a date with the woman when a whale washes up in respiratory distress. And she says, "Come on, George, you're the marine biologist. This whale's in trouble." And so they both all go over there and climb up, and it's obvious that the whale's got a golf ball in its breathing hole. And George immediately has to find a way of sneaking out of being a marine biologist because he has no idea what to do to help the whale. And I often feel like to say I'm a Christian or to say I'm an Episcopalian is not necessarily the credentials that a person is really looking for when they start conversations of faith or matters of the heart. That it's actually a little bit, it's like, so you say you're a marine biologist, you got something in distress over here. What you going to do about it? I don't want to be the one that sneaks off. So when you ask, what are those situations when it's weird? I would say the primary one is when my heart is not prepared to live into who I really am. And I therefore create a weird situation where I actually have the gifts needed in the moment, but I am not ready to offer them.
Good. So on that note, and for the sake of time, Christopher, can we turn it back to you just to offer some feedback? We can use these questions or different ones. What am I learning about the project, about myself, new possibilities, questions that are still questions, etc.
First, I want to thank everybody for their feedback. This was excellent. It's why I enjoy actually coming to the cafes on Thursday, because whether I'm presenting, which is my first time, or learning from everybody else, these reflections were really awesome. This is something that's just new on my perspective. It's only been developing in the last maybe 2-3 weeks at the most, as I'm observing my interactions at either the Panera or the Starbucks as I sit there. And so I really appreciate all of this. These were great. I think the one thing that hit me the most actually was what something Tom said about being intentional, and Katie, you talked on it as well about sharing. And I think for me, it's very easy to share with a stranger, but it's more difficult to share with my theater friends or the people that I sing in the community choir with, or because I don't want to mess with that friendship. I don't know where they are, and we have surface level friendships. I don't think we have deep level friendships, so I don't know where they stand spiritually. But there's this subconscious and probably conscious fear that, well, if I wear my priest collar there in that situation, or if I talk about Jesus too much, they're not going to want to be my friends. And we were acquaintances and friends prior to me even going to seminary. So I think it was very interesting. And I know with my ordination coming up, I caught myself inviting my friends, and I have one friend who's a Buddhist, and I realized that I had invited them and they were attending, and I hadn't told them that we were going to have Eucharist. And I was like, wait a minute, I need to make myself clear that you're invited, and you are invited to partake, but if you're comfortable, if that's if that's something you feel so moved. But I didn't want them to show up and be like, oh crap, there's Eucharist, like. And I realized I had not done that. And so it's something I had to back up and say, oh, hey, just FYI. And it was funny because my friend said, I already assumed that you're going to be a priest. I was like, well, but I just want to make sure that, I did not want to hurt my friend that I've been friends for like 40 years with this person, since we were children. And so that was very interesting. But these questions, especially the ones around what does it impact, how will it impact me? I think are things that I didn't consider. I was always looking at other people and going, oh, I want to talk and I want to share, but not realizing that it is a reciprocal mutual relationship, that when I'm sharing there's going to also be feedback, and there's going to be a component that impacts me, positive and negative. And so I think just being aware of that prior to going into the conversations will help me to be more prepared. When I was in a graduate school for counseling, my advisor said that the patient or the client you're working with will always find the thing that you're most insecure about and target it. And I think church is the same way as priests. A lot of the people we're interacting with sometimes will find the thing that we're most insecure or most not knowledgeable about or most uncomfortable talking about. And that's what they kind of seek out or for some reason target. And so just being aware that that could happen, I think goes a long way in helping be prepared and to be in the moment and to allow myself to be not caught off guard. So I really appreciate that. But I really also appreciate how Olivia and Eric reminded me about the cultural component. And you know, the community I'm working in is a diverse community, and the being invited into their spaces is something that I think is very important. I think as missioners, we often automatically think invite people to us, and how meaningful it is for us to open ourselves up to be invited to others and to be a part of other groups, to be a part of other people's lives, which I think goes along with the speaking and listening. I think, at least in my circle of priest friends, we're all really articulate and really, really good at talking. But sometimes we're not really good at listening. And I think if we literally look at like Jesus as our example, there are times when Jesus listens and doesn't speak or says very little. So I think that's something really important. And Olivia, I really appreciate you sharing the St. Francis model, because that was something my grandmother would always said, and I kind of forgot that. So thank you for bringing that up and reminding me of that, because that's a very important that we can share the gospel, but do it without words, do it through our actions. And in a lot of ways, I think that is the authenticity that so many people in our world are looking for, because I think there are a lot of people who say I'm a Christian, but and what they do is the antithesis of being Christ like. So I think, yeah, our actions are much more important than our words. So thank you, everyone.
Good. Oh, thank you. Thank you all. Thank you, Christopher, for giving us this gift of something to really dig into. I know it's the top of the hour, so just quickly in the chat box, some announcements for you as we go out into the world. Remember Isaac's invitation to that legislative hearing on church planting resolutions on, I think, April 20th. Yep. If you haven't seen it, just was released via an e-blast today. You've also might have seen it in our newsletter. We are doing a mini Genesis gathering, mini meaning last October we had about 90 people in attendance. We're trying to keep this one to about a third that size, just for the sake of deepening conversation. But you are still invited. It just means register soon if you would like to attend. That's for church planters and redevelopers in Yukon, Oklahoma, May 13th through 16th. Registration link in the chat box. And then email us if there's today's topic was around invitation, and you saw the question. What are some other cafe topics we could consider throwing out in the coming months? So send us an email, or maybe even stay on for a couple of minutes after the Zoom call if some idea has occurred to you. It's really good to receive your feedback and ideas around this. Anything else, Tom?
No, that's lovely.
Good.
Maybe the prayer that we have to offer is around this lovely description that Amy offered us. The practices of holding out an open heart, the practices of tending to our heart, staying open. May those practices be with you. May the Spirit speak to you in words you know could only come from the one who loves you, about how you do that work for the sake of the world. Let us go forth into the world rejoicing in the power of the Spirit.
Thanks
be to God.
All right.
Thanks, y'all.
Take care. Happy Holy Week.